Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Catrina Maxwell from CatMax Photography is joining me on the podcast today to talk about how to create a successful brand and lifestyle photo shoot. Kat and I recently worked together to create my new photos, and her process was top notch. So much so that in the middle of our photo shoot, I said to her, I have to get you on the podcast to talk about this. I loved crafting the storylines with her and then taking the pictures to actually tell the story. Listen in as Kat shares her journey in photography and then shares how we can take photos that allow us to make human connections. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Kat, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I am so excited to talk to you today. You and I just recently got to work together doing lifestyle and brand photo shoots, one for my business. And I said to you then, oh my gosh, this was so much fun. It was such a great time. And I want to go on and talk about the profitability of having really great pictures and you know, not just for the things that we do, but for who we are. And so I know we're going to jump into that conversation today. But before we start, I would love to just have you share with our listeners a little bit about your background, like what brought you into photography? Did you always grow up taking pictures, knowing that's what you wanted to do? Like, how did you get into photography?
So it's interesting. I never knew. I mean, as a child, apparently it was something that I wanted to do because my mom has found paperwork from school that said that is what I wanted to do. But I didn't really realize it until I was 28 years old and I was deep in the accounting field. And, people started telling me at parties and stuff where I was taking pictures that I should do this for a living. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do it for a living, I need to go to school. So I quit my job, went to school full time, and started shooting a lot of event and rock and roll photography and concerts and things, big concerts in town. And found that wasn't really paying the bills, but it was fun. And then so I went towards the corporate route to try to make a profit at what I was doing and make a living. And really enjoyed working in the corporate world because I had that experience from being in accounting. So it really kind of went hand in hand. But then when COVID happened, and I also thought that corporate would be what do you say? Like corporate wasn't going anywhere. Like right, I was like, I'm solid. Safe here. I can.
Now, when you say corporate, explain a little bit about what that means. Were you taking pictures of like headshots for companies? Were you taking pictures of their building? Were you taking pictures of their events? Like how were you using your photography?
So mostly, I guess the concert photography is somewhat like event photography. And so it kind of transitioned into event, and then it was like corporate event. And then those clients were needing headshots, and then sometimes they needed product shots. And since I went to school for commercial photography, I knew how to do all that. So I was able to help the corporate world with whatever they needed. I even did some interiors for corporate clients when they got new offices and that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm stable. I'm in and I would get a lot of like all day headshots for different big companies. And we would bring in makeup and we would do headshots all day long. And then I also did some editorial stuff during that time. And it was, not sure if you're familiar with it, but Style Blueprint is an online publication, and they would highlight women entrepreneurs. And it was during a time in my life when I really needed that. And just seeing these strong women and doing what they love and being successful. And so I did that a little bit too, mixed in with the corporate. Well, then when COVID hit, corporate headshots and corporate events were no longer.
They weren't as stable as we thought they were going to be during that time frame, right? Yeah,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like I thought I was good because I didn't figure corporate was going anywhere, but it did. And it did in a matter of like 48 hours, I lost everything. So, and I wasn't doing Style Blueprint anymore. They had kind of folded up here in Atlanta. And so
let's just stop right there for a second. Okay. So you had built a business going in, doing corporate events, corporate headshots, supporting corporations. And I just want us to understand that in 48 hours, that means every booking that you had going forward for the foreseeable future in March of 2020 went away.
Yeah. It was literally like a rug had been ripped out from under me. I sat here for those 48 hours.
And probably watched them come in one after the other. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was either a text message, it was an email, it was a voicemail, it was a phone call. I mean, it was like
you were probably afraid to look at your phone or answer it or open email.
Yes. Yes. And my husband was like, I just looked at him and I was like, what is happening here? Like, what this isn't supposed to happen. Like, and another thing is like when I was in the corporate world, I got laid off a lot. And the reason I went into business for myself, as I said, if I don't make it, it's because I'm not hustling hard enough. It's not because someone decided that my paycheck was too much, so they got rid of me. It was because I wasn't working hard enough. And so at this point, when COVID happened, it was like, I've been doing everything. I've been working my butt off. I got all these contracts. And now within 48 hours, they're gone.
Right.
So
I wish I had known you then. I would have given you a great big hug. I would have been trying to be cheery. Oh, that just... I know how it felt on the interior design side. Like, I understand what that felt like. Ours didn't get pulled out from under us as much as it got put on hold, right? Until we could find a way to do it online and get around it and go in and, wear 14 masks and sneak in when they were out of the house or whatever. But you cannot do that when you're photographing somebody's face at a time that we are not supposed to be together and the world is shut down and people aren't even going into the offices. You certainly can't be next to them doing makeup. So,
right.
I mean, yours was definitely different.
Yeah. And the corporate was 85%. Corporate events and corporate headshots were 85% of my business at the time. And the other part was, I was getting into the interiors. I was about 2 years into trying to network and start doing interiors. So I did have a little bit of a foot in the door. And where that kind of started was I was doing the headshot days at ADAC and they would sell out every year. And I was meeting interior designers. And then so I started doing interiors and just kind of blossomed from there. But I only had like a handful of clients at that time. And so that's kind of where it started and kind of where it progressed. And then, like I said, when COVID happened, it was just like, what's happening? And I went, I did just like most, a lot of people during that time, I went to a dark place and, stayed in my house, like most people stayed in my bed really. And just was like, everything's gone. Like, what's the point? And my husband, thankfully for the people around me, my husband, my past clients, my family were just like rooting me on and saying, it's going to come back and it's going to come back with a vengeance. Katrina, you better get ready, and I saw a lot of people pivoting during that time. And so I just started trying to think about what I wanted to do and what I was going to do going from this point.
Right. Diversification is key to some of this, right?
Yeah.
So that if one complete industry goes away or shifts or has a hit, there's something else. So the one nice thing is, corporate was 85%, but 15% was building in that interior design side and some of the others. I know that's how I first found out about you was we both live in Georgia and you had done the pictures at ADAC. And I knew people whose pictures were taken at ADAC by you because they started using those new headshots. And I always am digging who took your picture because that's something that I was always looking for, like who took that picture. So that was how I found out about you was all the way back.
Wow.
From, in 19 where you did ADAC Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did it since I think it was 17 was when we started. But I've done it 4 or 5 years now. And luckily it was crazy because that was the last job I did before COVID hit. I was at ADAC and we were doing the headshot day in March and then everything shut down that next week. So I just barely got that last one in there. But like I said, every one that we've done at ADAC has been sold out and people seem really happy with, and a lot of the clients that I have now are from that. So a huge, very grateful for ADAC and what they've helped me with. So, and
that also just,
I was going to say that, and we're actually talking in talks right now. Next week, we're going to start talking about ADAC Day, but we're going to possibly do it in the fall. So
nice.
we weren't able to do it in the spring.
Sure. You know what it also makes me think about is the profitability of saying yes one time to the right thing. You know, while that one opportunity with ADAC wasn't necessarily your bread and butter, it was the thing that you had built enough up credence or credibility rather up in that people were like, okay, so I've seen your work. Let's move forward and move into interiors. It gave you that foot in the door as you described it. And so I think that's important. Sometimes those yeses that seem a little bit off the beaten path can sometimes become the path later. Right?
Exactly.
So, all right. So COVID hits. You have your pity party, rightly so. I would have had it with you if I had known you at that point. And then you move forward and you start working with designers more and more because our industry opened back up where corporate still has not in a lot of ways. At least the way that it used to be, in person, pictures, the whole thing. So then tell me how you got into kind of some of your specialties within the interior design photography.
So while I was having my pity party, a lot of what I did was surfed Instagram. And a lot of the people that I follow are interior designers, HGTV. I watched a lot of HGTV. And I realized that that's something that I really enjoyed. And then as I was sitting around here, I was like, what in my life have I enjoyed the most? Like photographing. Like I love being behind my camera no matter what, but what is it that really brings me joy? And I started thinking back to those editorial pieces that I did for Style Blueprint and highlighting those women entrepreneurs and helping them to be successful and telling their story through those editorial pieces. That it just kind of lit a fire in me. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I guess these things happen for a reason, is what I was just telling somebody the other day. And as miserable as I was last year, I sat here and I was like, what's going to make me happy? And I was like, I want to help women entrepreneurs again. How can I do that? I wanted to be able to tell their stories correctly. And then I found this class that was a mastering branding photography class. And it was a 6-week course. And I was like, well, what else am I doing? I'm sitting around here in my pajamas, let me see, let me see what this is all about. So I sat for 6 weeks, went through the courses, and each week we got another class and we had to do homework and all this stuff. And I was like, it lit a fire in me. I was like, oh my God, like suddenly I didn't care about anything else that was happening in the world. I was just happy to be like doing something and focusing on something. And it really pulled me out of that dark place that I was in. And then I, called up some of my women clients that I knew were still rocking and rolling, most of them interior designers, because when I was surfing through Instagram, that was the other thing. Interior design didn't stop. And then I would hit up my clients and be like, you seem busy. Are you really busy? And they're like, yeah, oh my God, I'm slammed, And so I'm like, okay, well, the interior market has not slowed down at all. So I was like, maybe I can highlight some of these women. And so I just reached out to some of those clients and started telling them my ideas and what I was thinking about doing. And I got to give props to Leah May because she was my first one. I was like, look, I know you need me to do interiors, but we're doing a branding shoot. And so she was like, what?
I love her.
Yeah. And so
She's such a delight. Yeah.
And so I did a whole branding shoot with her on top of her interiors. And she was like, this is amazing because it's like now you have a lot of content. It's not just your interiors. You have a headshot, you have lifestyle, you have behind the scenes, you have personality that's going to go with all of this. And it tells your whole story, not just a piece of your story by sharing an interior. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing. When we're all sitting in our houses looking at Instagram and Facebook, that's all you have to tell your story, and connect with your audience. And I think that's very important in the business world, is to be able to connect with that audience. And on social media, that's a much huger audience than just going to a networking event. You know what I mean? So it's really important.
I do.
It's really important that you put yourself out there and you show people who you are through and through. And then you're going to be able to collect, have more clients that way by putting yourself out there. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what was so cool about it, watching it, and Leah and I have worked together before, and I was looking through something and I was like, well, that's Leah. I know Leah. And of course, I saw other people that I know, Jennifer, and I saw Jill, and just other people that I knew that you had done some of that for. And I thought what was so cool about it was not that your photography is not beautiful and perfected, but it showed the realness of the person. And I think that's part of what branding is there's a realness. Like we have enough that is photoshopped to darn death. We have enough that is where you don't even know if you can trust it or not based on the way you're looking at it. And so even seeing some of the behind the scenes that you can throw up in stories, and then seeing the more posed that, you might want to put on your 9 square or whatever it is that you're doing, they just all look like they were so great. And the pictures don't look flat, meaning they don't look dead. Do you know what I mean? They look like there is a story to be told. And I want to, let's move in and talk about that. Before we do that, let's talk just a minute about the difference between what is a headshot and what is a lifestyle branding photo shoot, because they are different.
Very.
And it doesn't mean they can't be mixed, but they are different types of pictures and perhaps different use of pictures. Share with us a little bit, because, for example, you would never consider going into a corporate environment going, let me take your lifestyle shots. They would think we were nuts. But we are creating a brand here, which is a different thing. So talk first about having a headshot and how we would use a headshot and what that would do for us.
So a headshot is basically just that. It's a headshot. And it's more on
usually like a picture from the chest up. I mean, it's really like a picture of your face in your head.
Right. Exactly. And it's, I want to say corporate-esque, but not necessarily, because I feel like a headshot is something that you use on, however, I've seen people use my lifestyle shots as their profile pic. So, I mean, it's either or, but it's more staged and more like looking at the camera straight on, no props, there might be different backgrounds, but it's very simple and clean. And a lot of people use it for like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram as just that profile picture.
And it's also used a lot. I know, like when I write articles, they ask me for a headshot. When I do a speaking event, they ask for a headshot. They don't necessarily want a full body shot. They don't want a lifestyle shot many times. They want just that small, clean, straight on, let's see your face. This is who the presenter is, or this is who wrote the article. So it's used a lot in publications as well.
Right. And it's something that I always try to include with the branding shoots, because you do have those situations where people ask for them. And I try to get a vertical and a horizontal to use for different reasons. And I try to get both angles just to, so you have it for those different reasons. Like when people message you and need things like that, you have the options of that. I try to include it in the branding shoots every time, unless somebody just is like, I don't want a headshot, but I can't say I've ever had someone say that to me. So it definitely is included and something that you need in your business, I feel like.
Well, and I've told this story on the podcast before, but I don't think I've ever told you. So the first time I wrote an article, this was back in maybe 2005. Someone asked me to write, it was Atlanta Home Improvement Magazine. And I wrote, we're talking 15, 16 years ago. So it's the first article I'd had published after leaving corporate and, moving into the interior side of things. And they asked me to write an article, and I wrote the article. I was able to take pictures of everything that I was doing that needed to be done. All that was great. And then they asked me for a headshot. And I was like, I don't have a headshot.
Oh, geez.
And they're like, but we need it, and we need it by tomorrow. So I didn't even have time to go to the picture place at the mall. Like, I didn't know anybody that could do a headshot. I'm like, I can't even get into JCPenney's or like the headshot place at the mall to get a picture. What am I going to do? And so we had just had our pictures taken for the directory at church. Mm-hmm. So it's like my husband, me, and the boys. And I went in and cropped my face out of the church directory picture. And the funny thing is, there's like a corner of my husband's shoulder right down, because there was no way that I could square it up. I didn't have Photoshop. I was getting by, right?
Yeah.
And I sent that picture in and they used it and they published it. And I still, to this day, my husband still giggles and laughs at me. And he's like, I'm totally in that picture with you. And I'm like, that is your shoulder, sweet boy. That is your shoulder. But what it did was it made me realize that if I was going to continue to put myself out, and back then we didn't have social media. We didn't have all those things back in 2005 the same way. So there wasn't as much of a need for a headshot other than to maybe put some pictures on a website. They're just, unless you were doing an article and speaking, which I had not really, that was, kind of the beginning of me starting to put myself out there. I realized very quickly I needed to go get a headshot. And so I then set up to get a more professional headshot without my husband's shoulder lurking in the bottom corner of that picture. Oh my gosh, I still laugh about that. And now these days, I would tell everybody, you never know when you're going to need it. And often when you need it quickly. And so just go ahead as you're starting your business and at least get a vertical and a horizontal headshot and have it in the ready so that you have it, you feel comfortable, confident, beautiful, handsome, whatever it is you want to feel in that shot, but that it in picture tells a little bit about who you are so that you can send it. Because when I've been asked for one, it has not been like, and yet send us a headshot in the next 3 to 4 months after you have a photo shoot. It is, we need it by Friday or we need it by Wednesday. So just go ahead and plan to get a good headshot done at the beginning. The reason I wanted to separate these two, Kat, is because when I reached out to you, a couple of months ago now, and said, hey, I'm looking to get some new shots done. I was supposed to get some done last fall. And between the photographer that I've used before, who I love dearly and has always done a beautiful, beautiful work for me, her schedule, my schedule, we could never connect. Nothing was working. And so I knew that I was going to have to reach out and find somebody in addition to help me brand myself. It's funny because back in the day, without knowing, I just always thought I was looking for headshots. More of like you would hear in maybe in the modeling world, your book of headshots. I guess that's just the thought that I always had. So the idea years ago of lifestyle and branding, I was like, I don't, what do you mean? And then trying to think of as a coach, which is different from an interior designer, what does a lifestyle branding shoot look like for me? That's always been, I think, one of the struggles is because I'm not, when I had an interiors business, I'm creating window treatments, I'm doing these things, I had something to take a picture of. It was something that I was creating or designing or fabricating or installing or working with. There was like an object that I'm holding that I'm responsible for. In coaching, a lot of what I do, the majority of what I do are concepts, mental concepts. There's no way to take a picture of that, right? And so I was having this like, what do you mean? Let's just take some pictures of me. Here's 3 cute outfits, stand cute, learn how to stand so that you don't look wide, like move your hips this way, move your shoulders that way, stick your neck out like a turkey so you don't look like you have 14 chins, like, all the things that you start to learn. But I never thought about it the way that you and I approached it this time. And I have to give, I had already started thinking about before I reached out, knowing that I needed a lifestyle shot. So I certainly knew what they were by now. I understood. But you took it to the next level when you reached back out to me. And so I know that this has been something that you have been kind of like really focused on maybe within the last 9 months, 10 months. But I'm telling you, your process was fantastic. And so tell us a little bit about how you put together a process so that we are telling a story, so that we are working on the brand. Because the same attention and detail, I think, went into my work with you. And I've never told you this because we just did the shoot a couple of weeks ago. But I think there were a lot of similarities that went into my process of working with you as it did the process that I have gone through working with people that were helping me brand my website and brand my social media and brand some other things like how do I want to be seen? You in parallel came along and asked a lot of the same questions. And then you worked really hard to give me ideas on how those would translate into a photograph. And it was amazing because you made me think about things, and we can tell the story when you share in a minute, but you made me think about things that I love, that I like, that I enjoy, that I had not thought about quite that way. Tell a little bit about how you created your process and what that has done to help this be like a really rich experience.
Well, so a lot of it came from the course that I took. And then a lot of it came from, like I said, my background with the Style Blueprint shoots and telling those stories. And then a lot of it came from my personal experience being on Instagram. To back up a little bit, when you were talking about needing a headshot and you need it tomorrow, and no one's ever looking for a headshot and telling you, can you send it in 3 months from now after you get done with your shoot? We're in a visual world. I mean, no doubt about it, between Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all of them, like,
Pinterest, all of it.
Yeah. It's all visual world. So I am very strong at believing that just like you need a business card when you own a business, you need a headshot at least. But if you want to, I feel like with connecting with your client and your client base and producing that audience, you are the person behind your business. And the more authentic you are with your clients, the more you're going to get the client you want, because your ideal client's going to come to you. And, a lot of people just look at that as, oh, well, I just need to be businessy and I just need to be behind my laptop and I need to be, I don't know, like whatever it is that you do, like work. Yeah, those shots are important, and it's nice to show that. And by all means, your audience likes to see the behind the scenes of what you do, but it's also, you need to connect on a personal level, I feel like. And the interest that you have, you'd be amazed at that's a lot of the interest that other people have. And then not only are you connecting with them on a business level, but you're connecting with them on a personal level. So a lot of it, when I get on the phone or I send out my questionnaires, I ask people, I'm like, what do you like to do? Like, if you were able to just have a day to yourself, what would you do? And, some people say they like to, I remember yours was binge watch Netflix, and so that was one thing. There's so many things that I've heard people say. I mean, a lot of times people are, I say, what are their favorite things to eat, or what are their favorite things to drink, or, just to try to get their brain going, because more than likely whatever you like, somebody else likes. And when they see that in the Instagram and they're flipping through or whatever social media they're on, and they see somebody with a cup of coffee, they're gonna be like, oh, what's that? Like, I like coffee. What is she drinking? Like, it's just a way to pull that audience in. It
is an instant connection. One of the things that I mentioned to you and we used in my shoot was I love antique glassware. I love antique. I love looking for that. The love for that was started when my grandmother was moved into the nursing home, and we had to go in and help clean out her home. And it was funny. Everybody kind of came in and took the things that they wanted out of the home, and meaning family members. And in the cabinets, there was left this avocado green glassware that had like a pitcher and 8 glasses. And I don't know if it was dark oak cabinets in dark green and somebody just missed it. But between my mom and her sister and her brother, everybody had taken everything they wanted. These things were left. And they told us, go in, get whatever you want. You can have it. And I was like, well, can I have that picture and those glasses? And they said, yes. Well, it gives me such a connection to my grandmother and to our family. And I have now been, like, for years, my mother and I go hunting at the antique stores to find more and more and more. So I have green glass all over the place. Then I started realizing that anchor hocking and all of the other people that made green glass back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, like, they're all the colors. So then I have all the colored glass. And it just, Kat, it brings me such joy. That and florals. And that goes back to my grandmother raising violets in this perfect light in her front room and all of these things. And I know that when I scroll through Instagram, I've seen a couple of different designers who will stop and put something about, and I see the glass that I collect on their page, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where'd you get that glass? And we like have this whole conversation about glass, and I immediately feel like we could be friends because we both like the same glass.
Exactly.
But I had never stopped and thought about it on my side about putting it out there. But I certainly, the minute you and I were having more and more of those conversations, I was like, I got it now. But it also made me stop and think, this was an interesting part of your photo shoot. Just my own self-reflection to answer your questions. I never really stopped and asked myself why I love florals so much. Like, I am that nerd that if everybody designed in all white, all gray, and all beige, I would have florals and color everywhere. And anything floral, within reason, my husband's like, that makes me think of you. That makes me think, because he knows I love it. I had never asked myself why I liked flowers so much. I had never stopped to really understand that connection, honestly, until the photo shoot we did a couple of weeks ago, because I kept saying to you, flowers are important to me. I want flowers. I'd bought fresh flowers. I was like, the azaleas are blooming. Let's walk by my azaleas. Like, where can we go where I can get some florals? Anyway, it was just a really neat experience for me to maybe dig down into not only what are the things that are important to me, but why. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know I'm a thinker anyway, and a questioner, but it really made me wonder why. And that even made me love the pictures even more that you took and presented to me.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other part of connecting with that audience is you share the same likes and the same interests. And then, that creates a connection and a bond. And I also feel like it also creates a trust, because they're like, oh, she's just like me. Like, if someone sees it, all it is business. Like, I mean, yeah, business. I mean,
it's so serious and boring.
Exactly. But then when you start adding in the fun stuff and you have those connections that you both like and that bond you together, and it gives you something else to talk about other than just numbers and business, it creates relationships and creating those connections. I mean, create revenue, in my opinion. Like it. Yeah. I enjoy work so much more. I will say, when I was in the corporate world, like I've always said, I enjoy being behind my camera no matter what. But to make solid connections and relationships with my clients, which is what I've been doing this past, I would say, year, the people that I have worked with, I'm not just working with them. They're relationships, they're friendships now. Like, and it was so funny because I was talking to my stylist the other day and I was like, this isn't just my client, it's my friend. Like, it's my best friend, and it's so great. And just getting women together, I just love it. I don't know. It's just something about it. And so that's where all this kind of came from and originated and what it's turning into. And I loved hearing your story, and I loved being able to put it together for you to where you could share it to your audience. And I love seeing my clients use their images and people connecting with them. I mean, what's better than that? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
right.
It's really, I can't think of the word right now, but it's just very rewarding. It's rewarding. And it's definitely where my passion is. And it's crazy because of, like we said in the beginning, I mean, I was doing concert photography, I was shooting events, I was shooting, but now I really feel like at the age that I'm at, I've finally honed into what I absolutely love to do.
There were a couple of other questions that you asked. And one of the things I want to suggest to people, if they're thinking about doing brand and lifestyle photography, one of the things that you also did, you certainly sent out a PDF, answer these questions. How do you want to feel? Where are you going to use these pictures? Do you have any specific needs? As far as, do you need a white background? Do you need this? Do you need that? You asked all those questions. But then you and I hopped on a phone as part of your process at the end. And we certainly talked about hair. We talked about makeup. I brought in a hair and makeup artist for the day of, and actually hired her to stay throughout the entire photo shoot, which was really great. And I think it was great for a couple of reasons. Number one, She took the time to get my makeup done in a way that would look good on camera, which is slightly different than the way that we might do our hair and makeup for the day to day. I had hairspray upon hairspray holding that hair where it needed to go. But, I'm a girl in the 80s, so that I was, give me some Aquanet all day long. I don't have a problem with that. But she didn't do it. I did it. But what was so cool was she also was there to help for that stray hair, that after you've changed clothes 14 times, you've moved indoor, you've moved outdoor, you're holding props. And sometimes it's those one or two things that then catch your attention in a picture. And she did a really great job, along with you and your assistant, of looking at the pictures in real time on the iPad, being able to make those small adjustments, to pull my shirt a certain way, to get the wrinkle out, the things that I would never see standing there. And you're looking at photo composition. You're looking at so many other things. You're checking lighting. It's like having a stylist when you do a photo shoot for an interior, separate from the photographer. You see things in multitude of ways. And so there were 3 people, not to mention I brought my almost daughter-in-law with me, who was great and helped me get my stuff ready. But you guys all worked together looking at things from slightly different angles to make sure that we were maximizing what we were doing. So I really want to highly recommend having somebody there separate from the photographer who can pay attention to those small details. Like, are you super shiny here? Do you have a hair out of place? Is your necklace skewed? Is your bra strap showing? Like all the little weird things that later you're like, oh, snap. Now I either have to pay for massive editing to clean that up, or I'm not going to be able to use that. And it was a perfect picture with perfect smile and perfect everything. And it looks like I have horns because of the way the light fixture is behind me or something.
Right. I'm always big into saying, I know the makeup artist may be an extra cost, but it's worth it in the end, because they also, I feel like when there's a makeup artist on set, my clients are more comfortable. They're more relaxed because they feel like somebody else is looking out for them. Somebody else is making sure that hair's in place. Somebody else is making sure their necklace isn't, got the clasp on the front. Someone else is, fixing their shirt. And when I shoot to an iPad and I'm able to show the client. And so I always show the client. And if the client's not happy with the lip color because they just changed their top because we're doing a different wardrobe look, the makeup artist can come in and change the lipstick. Or, oh yeah, like you said, I'm getting a little shiny because I've been taking pictures for an hour. Like, let's put some more powder on,
or dry. She brought rose water for me because I tend to get dry and not shiny. I mean, so it was just those little things that made me feel cared for, but also in a way that I knew was also trying to make me look my best that day. And it's an investment, right? Great photography, the same, and don't skimp on it. I'm telling you, pay a professional the same way that we want to be paid professionally for interior design, and not hire somebody because they watched HGTV to come in and now they're a designer to decorate. Just because somebody knows how to pick up an iPhone does not mean they need to be your brand photographer. So pay for a professional and let them come in and do it. But having other people on the team to support you and me, I think allowed that day to go off. I mean, it felt like we were zooming by and having fun. It didn't feel stressed. I don't love being in front of a camera. I prefer being right here, as much as I usually love my pictures when they're done well. There are plenty that I would throw away like everybody else, but I'm not as comfortable in front of a camera. I am comfortable on a stage in front of 1,000 people, but not necessarily in front of a camera. It's the weirdest thing. But I have to say, of all the photo shoots I've done, I was probably most comfortable that day compared to any I've ever done.
Yeah, because you felt like you were being taken care of. You felt like you were being taken care of. And being that you were prepared and you had done your homework to get ready for that shoot. And then we did have, my assistant and the makeup artist there. We were able to, like you said, get the most out of that shoot. And I can't remember how many final images I sent to you, but it was a lot. And that's a lot of content for you to use over the next, month or two, or even 3 months to cycle through your social media. And like you said, and tell those stories. And so that's the other thing that's good about having the extra hands and the being prepared and getting on that strategy call beforehand, because in that way we're on the same page. And then when I just show up to the shoot, we're not spending, the first 30 minutes trying to figure out location and figure out, oh, do you have this? Can we find this? Like, no, we came to that shoot prepared and we were ready to make it happen, and I do feel like we got a lot of great stuff. I really enjoyed your shoot.
So one of the things that I thought made it work out that way, I want to talk about this for a minute. And that was, again, that hour conversation, 30-minute, I don't remember how long it was, 30-minute conversation we had at the beginning. You started asking me, of course, like we talked about, where am I going to use them, all those general questions. But then we started getting into, okay, so you love Netflix. Tell me, how do you like to watch Netflix? And I'm like, I love to just snuggle up on the couch and turn it on. And I told you, I think I said, like, right now, my husband and I are watching Schitt's Creek and laughing our rear ends off. And, we've watched all kinds of shows that we can watch together. And you came up with the idea, well, why don't you pop some popcorn? And why don't we put you on the sofa and have you watch Netflix? And we have a picture of me holding a remote pointing to Netflix. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And then we talked about, of course, the antiques and the flowers, and we pulled all of it in. You immediately asked me, do I have pets? And I was like, I have 2 little dogs. And you're like, oh my gosh, bring your little dogs outside, which was a riot because they were not well behaved with 5 people around me telling them what to do. They were not interested in doing that.
They were sweet.
But they were sweet. They were sweet little puppies. But you asked me questions. Like I told you, I love to read. And so we pulled out some of my favorite books that I use in coaching and took some pictures of that. But I said to you, I am so boring. And you're like, no, you're not. Look at all these things that you do. And then we were able to translate that so that we had a list. Like I loved it. Like when you go into a wedding and you've got the list of here are the shots I need to get. You came to the photo shoot with a list of shots, and we looked at what did we want to put on that list or add to that list. I had purchased flowers. I had I'd already popped all the popcorn. I had already done all the things that we had mugs that we were going to use that had sayings or things that we wanted. Because we had that photo shoot conversation, I was able on my side to pull together all the things to make it go well, while you were able to pull together what you knew you would need to show up at the photo shoot. So it was the combo of us being on the same page before the day came, as opposed to getting together and going, now what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
We had done that work prior to, and that made it easy. I'm going to tell on myself a little bit because I think you'll appreciate it. We were down in my basement level, which is, a family room and all that. And I said, hey, Kat, you want to see where it all started? And you want to see what one of my other hobbies is now? And you're like, sure. And I walk you back into my drapery workroom and you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't you even tell me about this? And what are you doing? Why are we not taking pictures back here? And I was like, I said, well, I had that business like 16 years ago. I didn't really think about that for today's photo shoot. And you're like, we are totally taking pictures in your drapery workroom. And I just so happened to be working on because I still go down there and work. It's now a hobby for me where it used to be a business. But I was working on all new window treatments and bedding for the redo of my son's bedroom. He's moving out and getting married. By the time this airs, he will be married. And I needed to redo that whole room. So I actually had things on the table that I was working on. And you were like, I cannot believe you didn't even tell me about that.
Yeah, because that was the beginning of your story. People's eyes light up when I go, well, I started in accounting, and they're like, wait, what? And they want to hear that. They're like, how did you go from accounting? That's part of your story. That's what has made you who you are today. And we can't leave that out. We got to tell that part of your story. So I was just like blown away. And I have to say that was one of the first times I've had that happen, where I just like turned the corner and I'm like, wait a minute. this room is full of textures and colors, and this is your space. Like, this is, one of your favorite spaces. We have to capture it. So
it just made me laugh. Okay. But one of the reasons I bring that up, and I'm telling on myself that I didn't even, it did not even dawn on me to let's take a picture in my drapery workroom. Like, it just didn't dawn on me.
And as many times as we talked and emails and I'm like, how could you have been hiding this from me?
Right. But I think the point in that is sometimes some things that we do, we almost take for granted that either everybody knows we do it or that it maybe doesn't hold a level of importance. And it wasn't that I don't think my drapery workroom is important. Like, I made a great living, great money. It launched everything. I did it for 16 years. I just wasn't thinking in that direction. And, it's easy sometimes for us to miss something that another person can pull out of us. And that's what I did love about your process and your questions and all the things was it brought it out. But I would also say on the day of, don't be afraid to mention something to the other person. Right? Like, what if I had never showed you that space?
I would have been very upset. I would have been very upset with you.
Yeah. If later you had found out about that whole, because it's an awesome space. And what if I hadn't shown it to you? We were just talking about things we love and what we do and how we spend our time. And,
but especially with you being in the interior design field, how many other of your clients do you think are into draperies?
All of them.
Exactly. So they want to know that that's where you came from, and that's where your passion was when you started this journey. So right. Yeah. And I think it gives you great things to talk about. And again, a way for your clients to connect with you. Oh, so you're a consultant now, but you used to do drapery and you still do drapery and you love doing that. Like, that's one of your side things. Like, that's awesome. It's another connection point.
It is. It's just so funny that I never even thought about it. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know if I had a mental block. I don't know what my problem was, but I love that you were so quick to go, oh my gosh, we need to add this in. Let's do it right now. Set this up. We're taking this picture. Like, we're moving forward here. Yeah. And you didn't let me out of it. And you were so kind to be able to see the potential in the picture that I had not recognized yet. And that is another reason that I think we need to hire a professional photographer, especially one that is focused on doing these things because they know and can help tell the story. You saw something that I didn't see, but you brought it out. And then immediately I saw it. And I think that is what separates a professional from somebody who takes good pictures with their camera. Yeah.
And those are a couple of my favorites. I mean, I have quite a few from your shoot, but those were because of the story behind it, because it was a secret. And it's like, look at this room and look at this shot I got that would have never happened had she not brought me in there to show me.
It's almost like a hidden gem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Look what I found.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So let me ask you then, you do a lot to have yourself prepared for the photo shoot, for a branding photo shoot. What do you think that those of us being photographed can do to be prepared well for the photographer and the stylist and everybody to come in? What can we do on our side to make it, because it is stressful. You and I talked about it. You even talked about when you're on the other side of the camera, it's stressful. I know I stressed about what clothes am I going to wear? How do they fit me? Ironing them because I know that wrinkles are hard to Photoshop out. Like, I remember all the things, but it still it's a lot because it feels like for me, it's a lot of money. It's 3 or 4 days, totally well invested money, but it's an investment. You have a short amount of time, and it's not like I can go back later and say, I wish I could change to different clothes. Like, when the picture's taken, it's what I have on that day. And then I'm praying for a good hair day the whole day, right? We all do that. But what can we do on our side to prepare to be ready to work with a brand stylist, lifestyle photo shoot kind of thing?
Right. So with how I do it, like I will say my background in editorial, I would get a phone call and they would be like, you got to go shoot this person and tell their story next week and good luck, and it's like, okay, or sometimes it'd be like 2 days from now, like that's the only time they're available. Like you got to go tell their story. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it was very, last minute a lot of times. And so I had to tell those stories. But what I like to do now with what I do is I like to get us both on the same page. I have, like you said, a process. I have a planning guide. I have a questionnaire. These get us on the same page. And then after those are completed, then we do a strategy call and we get on that phone call and we just brainstorm and we talk and we get to know one another. And I think it's important because that makes you comfortable with me, because now I'm not just showing up at your location and you're like, don't know what I look like or who I am. You know what I mean? Like it makes that connection on the phone, and we put our heads together and we can tell that we both are after the same goal. And then whatever you go over or whatever we talk about, like do as much as you can ahead of time. Like you've already touched on that. You had the popcorn pops, you had all the props sitting on your kitchen counter and was like, this is everything that I pulled together. And I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Because if you have all that, it's less that you're having to carry up here because it's all right there in front of you. And so you want to be as prepared as possible and take as much off of you the day of the shoot. Like I said, when I did the editorial stuff, I just showed up and I had everything kind of going on up in here. And sometimes the person that I was shooting didn't have any idea what I was going to do. And I just did it, But the nice thing about this and making it an investment is we're both working together and collaborating together to get that story and to tell those parts of you that are going to help you connect with your audience. So you just want to come prepared. You want to, like you said, it's an investment. You got to put the time in, and the time that you put in is what you're going to get out. It's not just about the photographer. Yes, I'm putting my time in too, but by having two people putting their time and efforts and into it, you're going to get more out of it.
Yeah. And I know I took a lot of notes on the strategy call that we went through. I told you that. And then I even wrote down, based on some of the pictures that you and I mentioned and kind of brainstormed that we could take, where you kind of created your list of what the shots would be. I wrote down, here's what I need to do and prepare and pull together for that. And then I went out into Asana and created a project called photoshoot, listed every single thing I had to do and started putting it into my calendar, like choose my clothes at this point, choose my jewelry at this point, pull together all of the different props at this point. So I scheduled time on my calendar. I know people are really seeing my nerdiness come out, but that was what helped me make sure that when you came in that day, at least the things that I knew about, I had ready. I even had time in there to iron clothes, and I hate to iron. I do too. I had downy wrinkle released as much as I could, and I knew I had to pull out the iron, but it was totally okay. But I ironed even more than I thought I would need, which was a good thing, because a couple of times I switched into something that I had not originally planned just to get another quick picture. So almost trying to be over prepared in a way. Really made it so that when you ask me, do you have one other thing like this? Do you have this? I'm like, sure, it's right here. Yeah, it's right here. And when we picked up and moved to a second location, it was easy for me to take and put things in a bag and get in the car and go 2 miles down the road to the next location and have everything that I needed there as well. I even went so far as we did a picture with champagne to celebrate. And I even found champagne called Michele. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. Right? Because it's a little funny detail. And I mean, who wouldn't want to drink champagne that was named after them? Right? Because surely it was named after me. One other thing I want to just say, in regards to how the photographs can be used and kind of what I did with mine, just to give some people an idea. All the stories that you and I brainstormed, and when I say stories, things like I love antiques, I love milk glass, I love flowers. I wrote those down as independent, like storylines. And then I sent them out to all of my marketing and social media teams so that when I gave them access to the pictures, I gave them like the subject line, if you will, for the stories that we were telling. So they now have jump off points. And I said to them, I'll provide any information you need. I gave them all kinds of background around why we took that picture, the different ways it could be used, that was helpful because you and I had already brainstormed it. I just picked it up and moved it into a bullet pointed list, sent it out to my marketing team so they know how to use those pictures and tell the story that is really about me, what was going on behind the picture, why we did it. And so I just want to encourage people, as you're doing the work, we always talk about repurposing it, repurpose the brainstorming, because they all wrote back and said, this is gold. And I'm like, yeah, because now it makes their job easier because they're telling the real story behind the picture.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to posting something on Instagram and going, okay, what do I say about this? You know what I mean? Like, how do I talk about this? But if it's something that you're passionate about and that is a personal interest to you, yes, it makes it a lot easier. So that definitely, I mean, and again, that's where the connection comes in with your audience, because those stories, I mean, some people, I'm a picture person. So a lot of what I do is scroll through and just look at pictures. And then occasionally I'll stop and read the verbiage. But then there's people out there that are readers and they like to read the stories. So, I mean, there's so many different audiences that you can attract by doing these things and taking these pictures that tell the stories. So
how often, Catrina, do you think we should be taking these pictures? I mean, we can't do it every month. And I know that, if we're tying in some of it into an interior photo shoot, then we're getting a sprinkling of lifestyle branding while we're photographing the interiors. But if we were looking at really just doing a lifestyle branding shoot, are we talking once a year, twice a year, once every 5 years? What do you recommend? I mean,
some of my clients do it twice a year, every 6 months. Some of them do it every quarter. It really depends on the social media outlets that you're using and how much, how much you put out there, and how much you want to, put out there. I know that, I mean, every quarter is a lot, but I mean, I cannot remember how many. I want to say you got like 80 photos in your shoot, right? It wasn't
something like that. It was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And you think if you cycle those through twice, like, and if you're posting once a day, or are you a person that posts 3 times a day? Like that's where it's going to vary. But I do offer packages of like discounted packages the more you book with me. So like you can just book one session and see how it goes, or you can book every quarter with me and we can go ahead and get those dates on the calendar, lock them in so that you're ready and prepared, and we'll start the process, of getting you in that cycle.
I think at least twice a year, honestly. Oh, yeah. So that you show the different seasons, because like a lot of my pictures I've got on short sleeves and I'm outside. Well, that feels a little weird sometimes in the dead of winter unless I'm putting oh my gosh, I can't wait for spring to arrive again. But otherwise, it's kind of nice to have some of those more fall, winter and spring, summer.
Yeah. I completely agree. And there's so many different things you can do in the different seasons that with your photos. And again, it speaks to the people during that time of year. And these are photos that you can cycle through. You don't just use them once. And that's the thing. By putting all the time and effort and planning into it, they're solid images that you can use again and again and again.
It helps create that video kind of library, if you will.
Right. And you just kind of keep building on that. But yeah, I have clients that do different, some do them one time a year, some twice, and then sometimes 4 times a year. So it's just up to the person and how much they want to be posting.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, I love my pictures. I loved the experience. I loved thinking it through. I've already talked to you about fall coming up, getting ready to do it again. And I just want to recommend everybody hire a professional photographer for your pictures. Take the time to not just photograph the interiors. People really do want to connect with the interior designers and the drapery workrooms and the upholstery workrooms and the stagers that are behind the work. Like if I go look at a page and I never see people, or I go to a website and I never see people, it's just work. And we want to connect with each other. I think that's really what we're doing is trying to have a human connection and then do business together. And so hiring that really great photographer who can bring out kind of the sparkle that each person has and to show it in the best light. come up with a story before you go into the photography session. It does make it so much easier. And if you can, if you're in the Atlanta area or around here, call Catrina for sure. If not, fly in and talk to her, or seriously look for somebody in your area who does something similar. I think you will. They're great photographers around the entire country. You just want the right one for what it is you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
So Catrina, as we wrap up our time together today, tell everybody where you're hanging out on Instagram and what your website is so that they can follow you.
So my Instagram is just CatMax Photos. That's and where that came from is my first name is Catrina, so CAT, and then my last name is Maxwell, MAX. So CatMax Photos. So at CatMax Photo is my Instagram handle. And then my website is catmaxphotography.com. And on there, you can see on the left-hand side, there's a personal branding experience tab. And you can see all about the personal branding experience there. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, but Instagram and my website are where most of my work can be seen.
Awesome. And I will have the links to everything in the show notes. So anybody who's looking, you can always go there and get it. And I just appreciate you coming on to talk about a branding shoot, lifestyle shoots, why they're necessary, what they are, how they differ from headshots, and so much great information. It was just really such a fun day. It was a lot of fun. And, one last thing I want to say is I think it's amazing how God doesn't waste anything. And so when you look at your accounting background that helped you understand corporate, when you look at photography that helped you understand corporate, when you look at all those things and then you started working with other people and then found joy in interiors, it really is a culmination of all the work that you had done before. And perhaps if you hadn't done that work, you wouldn't know how much joy this brought you. I know I look at my life the same way, starting off in corporate, building financial software, moving into doing interiors, and now moving into coaching, consulting, combining the two, 20 something, 30, actually almost 30 years of work combined to do what I do today. But I could not do what I do today if I had not had those experiences.
Exactly.
So it's just a neat thing to see how God is at work in your life.
Yes, absolutely.
And bringing things around. So exciting.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad, I'm so thankful for the opportunity to do this podcast with you today. And I'm thankful for the opportunity that you were put in front of me because I really enjoyed your shoot and pulling out of you what your personal story is and you being able to share that with others. And that's what brings me joy too, is seeing how those images help you and work for you. And so I'm excited to see that. Today you showed me your website and how much change has happened on your website with the images. And I'm just very excited to see what happens from here for you.
Me too. Well, thank you for being part of my story now. So we got other chapters to write, girl. So hang on.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kat.
All right. Take care.
You too. Thanks, Kat, for joining me on the podcast. I really do love all of the photos you took, and I enjoyed working with your team. Consistency in our branding is so very important, starting with our why, our values, and then letting that actually show up in the pictures that represent our work and our business. If you're interested in learning how to be very intentional with the business you're creating, check out my masterclass where I teach you to reclaim your time, regain control in your business, and make more money. You can find this on my website at www.scarletthreadconsulting.com. Choose to invest in your business to create profitability. And remember, profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.